What's up, everybody? Couch Milfs here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video. And in this video, we gotta break down the brand new experimental patch notes for February 11th, because these changes are quite massive, just like your I'm gonna be breaking down all the changes and everything you need to know about these changes for your ranked games. But it's never been easier to climb the ranks of Valorant with our special 50% off sale right now in the links down below, where you'll get access to in-depth advanced guides and everything that you possibly need over every single hero to dominate the ladder with ease. Don't miss out on this amazing opportunity, but without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, moving on to the first character on our list that actually got a pretty sizable buff. She's thicker than a bowl of oatmeal. You know who I'm talking about, and it's Orisa. Now, Orisa got a change only to her Fortify, but it can be pretty important. And the change states this: Fortify prevents critical headshot damage when active, and the description was, this will make Fortify more reliable at preventing large bursts of incoming damage and should help it feel more consistent as a defensive ability. And this is actually more important than you might think at first glance. Yes, Fortify can shield you from a lot of different damage sources, but you could never use it as a supplement instead of natural cover or your shield, because enemies could literally just beam you right in the head over and over again. And yeah, you're taking less damage, but now you're taking more damage because they're just going to repeatedly hit you in the head. And now, because of this change, Orisa can aggressively take space with Fortify up against characters that would typically be able to do a ton of damage into her head, like Hanzo and like McCree in particular, plus many more characters. This is definitely going to be a pretty big buff to her overall, but we're going to have to wait and see how much this is going to affect her pick rate, because I don't know if this is quite enough to change her. In the grand scheme of things, this is a rather minor buff than doing something like increase her barrier health. But unfortunately, one of the most satisfying sounds in the game was that fat Orisa on Orisa action, where they would both headshot each other and Fortify. But regardless, Orisa did get a pretty sizable buff, so all three of you that are Orisa mains, y'all are pretty excited, and everyone who just is really tired of playing Hammond, y'all are probably excited as well. So Orisa did get a pretty nice buff here. But let's move on to the next character on the list, which is Reaper. And this is Reaper's change. Reaper got a Hellfire shotgun change as primary fire, and the spread was reduced from 8 to 6, but the damage per projectile was reduced from 7 to 6. And the description said this: Reaper shotguns have high damage potential, but require close range or large targets to fully utilize. We're experimenting with smoothing this out by extending the range at which he can consistently deal damage while lowering the maximum damage of each shot. Now, ultimately, this is gonna mean that you can be more accurate with the Hellfire shotguns. Less of a spread means more tight of a cluster, which typically is going to be more damage from any mid or even slightly further ranges. And of course, you're going to be able to get more of those spreads in the head if you are more accurate on Reaper than your average Reaper just aiming for the body. But the downside is you have a lot smaller ceiling as far as doing giant amounts of burst damage to tanks. Now, if you get up close and personal and you hit all the pellets in the head, maybe you will actually end up doing more damage because you're going to get all crits. But the really interesting thing to me about this change is it's going to allow Reaper to duel other DPS a little bit better, which is something that I can like about Reaper, because Reaper doesn't have a problem up against tanks right now. That's not his main problem. His main problem is all the other characters like Reaper and Hanzo and even some supports like Brig that can really give him a hard time. And the fact that he's just going to be able to consistently do more reliable mid-range damage if you have the mechanical skill to at the very least track your target, that makes me think that this is overall a buff, even if at first glance it seems that reducing his maximum damage is a big deal. But it's definitely interesting that they would do this change in the first place, and I'm really excited to see what other tweaks they're gonna have down the line. Definitely let me know what you think about this specific change in the comments down below. And then we're going to the next big character that got a rather interesting change. We got none other than Winston, and Winston had this change. Base armor / health has been redistributed from 100 to 400 to 150 to 35, and they stated this: with this change, Winston will be slightly more resilient against shotguns, beams, and weapons with high rate of fire. Now, this is actually a really nice change for Winston, because really think about the types of fire that were giving Winston a lot of trouble. Characters specifically like Reaper, like Echo, were just making it a nightmare for Winston. Even characters like Tracer, and this is all gonna help with that. This is overall just gonna give Winston that little bit more survivability, and it's kind of interesting right now because they're buffing Winston, basically making him more reliable, when in the past they hit all these characters with these really big nerfs, and it really really seemed like they were going to actually reduce the power level of a ton of characters in the game, but then out of nowhere, they just started buffing and buffing and buffing, and you see this as a result. Winston just can't survive in the current landscape without a change like this, and I'm still not sure if this is going to be enough when compared to his counterpart, Wrecking Ball. We're going to have to wait and see on that one, but Wrecking Ball did receive some pretty interesting nerfs, so maybe the day that Winston is back on top is coming before you know it. But let's talk about the last change in the list, which is that Wrecking Ball change I alluded to. And basically, Wrecking Ball got a grappling claw nerf. The knockback strength got reduced by a whopping 25%, and they said this about the change. For how often it can occur, Wrecking Ball's knockback is potentially too strong. We're reducing the distance it moves enemy players to bring it more in line with other low cooldown knockback abilities. And essentially, Wrecking Ball is going to have a lot harder time booping you and your teammates into his own team, which was one of the predominant strategies on Wrecking Ball. That's one of the primary ways he got value outside of his ultimate, is by consistently displacing people and putting them exactly where he wants to. And yes, he can still do that to a tiny extent, but he's not going to be able to do that to the giant extent that he used to be able to, where he could really launch people. And that little bit of percentage can be the difference between you getting peel and living and you just insta dying. On top of that, you got to think about Rein's CC resistance, and Wrecking Ball has typically been a pretty bad counter to Reinhardt, always displacing him around the map and things like that. But with this change, plus the already existing CC debuff that Rein has, Rein's looking like a fresh snack in the current meta, and maybe he might just be meta. I really hope so, because we've been having way too much Wrecking Ball just dominate the ladder, but I'm ultimately not quite sure if this is a big enough change. Wrecking Ball has been nerfed and nerfed and nerfed, and he's still the most dominant character in the game right now with the highest pick rate. And I do really think that this is the biggest problem right now with the game as a whole, is Blizzard themselves really haven't gotten the perfect balance on tanks. A lot of times they have certain tanks meta for a while, and then they buff other tanks, and it's not quite certain whether or not they want an ever-changing meta or they want some tanks to just be automatically better, period. But in any case, I know that a lot of people are tired of the rap, but definitely let me know what you think of this change. Do you think it's enough to make Wrecking Ball not see as much play? Do you think the Winston change is going to increase his pick rate by a dramatic margin, or do you think that these are just not enough? And what type of changes would you like to see in the tanking regard to see some of your favorite tanks get a lot more play? And I know big fan favorites such as Rein, Zarya, Winston, Diva, but as usual, definitely let me know what you think about the entire patch notes and all your opinions about it in the comments down below. And we already know that Valentine's Day is coming up, and most of you are going to be chilling at home with your local MILF, just relaxing on Valentine's Day. But after, you got to climb the ranks of Overwatch, and we got a special Valentine's Day sale in the links down below for a special 50% off. So after you pop off in the bedroom, you can pop off in Overwatch as well, but go check it out in the links down below. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for coming by. That's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.